The House will come to order. Today, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Maya Rainey from Banning Lewis Academy, Colorado Springs, Colorado, guest of Representative Wilson, House District 20.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile, Armagost, Bacon, Byrd, Bockenfeld, Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Bradley, Brown, Catlin. Rep. Catlin's excused. Clifford, Doherty, DeGraff. DeGraff is excused. Degree Kennedy, Duran, English, Representative English. English is excused. Epps.
Here.
Evans. Here. Frizzell. Froelich. Representative Froelich. Rep. Froelich is excused. Garcia. Hamrick. Hartsook. Hernandez. Representative Hernandez.
Excused.
Herod. Rep. Herod.
Excused.
Holtorf. Judah.
Here.
Joseph. Kip. Leader. Lindsay. Lindstead. Luck. Rep. Luck.
Excused.
Lukens. Lynch. Mabry. Marshall. Martinez. Morrow. McCormick. McLaughlin. Ortiz. Rep. Ortiz is excused. Parenti. Puglisi. Ricks. Ricks is excused. Rutanel. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Representative Soper.
Excused.
Story. Taggart. Titone. Representative Titone.
Excused.
Valdez. Rep. Valdez.
Excused.
Velasco.
Present.
Vigil. Weinberg. Weissman. Wilford. Wilson. Winter. Winter's excused. Woodrow. Young. Representative Young.
Excused.
And Madam Speaker.
Yes. With 52 present, 12 excused, 1 vacant, we do have a quorum. Representative Wilford.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And it is an honor to serve with you.
I move that the Journal of Thursday, January 18th, 2024 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you've heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Members, our first order of business is consideration of resolutions. Thank you, members. We are getting to work. Thank you for your attention and participation. I want to remind our body before we begin our work today about our commitment to respectful dialogue and debate when we are engaging in topics and issues that are of import to us and our constituents, and really appreciate your partnership in bringing that level of civility and respect to our conversations. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 003.
Senate Joint Resolution 3 by Senators Gonzalez and Winter F., also Representatives Froelich and Garcia, concerning the designation of January 22nd as Roe v. Wade Anniversary Day.
Thank you, Mr. Schiebel. Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move Senate Joint Resolution 24003 on third reading and final passage, and ask for an aye vote, and ask for it to be read at length.
Thank you, Representative Froelich. Mr. Schiebel, will you please read our resolution?
Whereas on January 22nd, 1973, the Supreme Court of the United States found in Roe v. Wade 410 U.S. 113 that the United States Constitution protects the right to abortion. And whereas on June 24th, 2022, the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the precedent established by Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania v. Casey, 505 U.S. 833, ruling in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, 142 Supreme Court 2228, that the United States Constitution does not confer a right to abortion, and that the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. And whereas Justices Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan issued a dissenting opinion in Dobbs stating, whatever the exact scope of the coming laws, one result of today's decision is certain, that curtailment of women's rights and of their status as free and equal citizens. And whereas the surest protection against that curtailment of rights is now offered only by state legislatures and within state constitutions. And whereas upon the Dobbs decision, and again on the following anniversary of the 1973 Roe ruling, tens of thousands of Coloradans across the political spectrum took to the streets throughout the state to express their disappointment and rage. And whereas overturning Roe has resulted in significant physical and mental trauma to, as well as significant financial burden on, people no longer able to access abortion care where they live and who must seek care elsewhere. And whereas marginalized groups have been systematically denied equal access to abortion even before Roe was overturned, especially Black, Latina, and Indigenous people of color, people with lower incomes, and people in remote, rural, and underserved areas. And whereas on April 4th, 2022, to secure the statutory right to abortion free from government interference in the face of the pending Dobbs decision, Governor Polis signed into law House Bill 22-1279, passed by the Colorado General Assembly, titled the Reproductive Health Equity Act, or REA. And whereas on April 14th, 2023, Governor Polis signed into law the package of 3 bills passed by the Colorado General Assembly, titled the Safe Access to Protected Healthcare Package, or the SAPHC package, which included Senate Bills 23-188, 189, and 190. And whereas Senate Bill 188 codified protections for Colorado's patients, providers, and helpers of abortion and gender-affirming care against out-of-state prosecutions, civil lawsuits, investigations, and extradition claims. And whereas Senate Bill 189 mandated that abortion be a covered service without deductibles, co-pays, or co-insurance under private health insurance plans, which protects Coloradans on private plans, but not the hundreds of thousands of Coloradans on publicly funded insurance plans. And whereas Senate Bill 190 categorized the deliberate false advertising of abortion services as a deceptive trade practice. And whereas the right to abortion is still not currently an explicit constitutional right in Colorado, and has therefore been challenged 49 times since 2010 in the state legislature. And whereas Colorado voters defeated fetal personhood amendments, which are total abortion bans, by 30% with Amendment 67 in 2014, by 41% Amendment 62 in 2010, and by 46% Amendment 48 in 2008. And whereas in 2020, Colorado voters defeated Proposition 115, a 22-week abortion ban, by 18%, with more votes cast opposing it than President Biden received on the same ballot. And whereas Amendment 3 of the Colorado Constitution, adopted in 1984 by a margin of fewer than 10,000 votes, forbids the use of public funds by state and local government to cover abortion. And whereas, while Amendment 3 passed by less than 1% of the vote in 1984, in 2022, exit polling during Colorado's midterm elections found 63% of voter respondents agreed that Colorado's Constitution should be amended to protect abortion. And whereas polling has consistently shown that a significant majority of Colorado voters support an amendment making abortion a constitutional right and repealing the prohibition on health insurance coverage for abortion. And whereas for the past 4 decades, as a direct result of Amendment 3, Colorado state and local government employees and Coloradans enrolled in state insurance programs have been denied insurance coverage for abortion for themselves and their families, resulting in discriminatory and harmful effects on those impacted. And whereas Colorado was the first state in the nation to legalize abortion, and Colorado has since led the nation at the ballot box and in the legislature, and should continue to lead the nation in protecting abortion access without restriction. And whereas in 2024, Coloradans will be asked to vote on the general election ballot on a constitutional amendment protecting abortion, thus repealing the earlier discriminatory Amendment 3 of the Colorado Constitution from 1984. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 74th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, recommend voters amend the Colorado Constitution to enshrine in it the right to abortion and prohibit Colorado state and local governments from denying or discriminating against the exercise of that right, and hereby designate January 22nd of each year as Roe v. Wade Anniversary Day.
Members, would anyone like to speak to the resolution? Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a Republican House caucus statement on this resolution. The people of Colorado are suffering from the weight of the high costs of inflation, housing, and taxes. Homelessness and crime are on the rise. The people have sent legislators here to the Capitol to work on making their lives better. Instead of focusing on the issues of affordability, housing, and crime that Democrats have caused with their failed policies, they are pulling another bait-and-switch scheme by attempting to turn the conversation towards abortion. Roe v. Wade was overturned on June 24, 2022 by the United States Supreme Court by the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization decision, and is no longer the law of the land. In that decision, the Supreme Court stated that it is the right of the states to develop abortion laws. Last session, there were 3 more extreme abortion laws passed by the Democrat majority, even though Colorado already had the most radical abortion laws in the country, including abortion through the day of birth. This resolution is purely political hype and will do nothing to address the real issues facing all Coloradans. The legislator was elected to be the voice of all people and work towards finding solutions to those problems, not to proclaim the work of past legislators for political gain. There is no shortage of issues that deserve this body's attention. The Republicans stand united with us, the people of Colorado, in our message to our Democrats on the other side of the aisle. Let's go to work for the people of Colorado and stop playing political games. And on a personal note, Roe and the cases that stem from it represent a national disgrace, not a point of pride. Many years from now, most of us in this room will be long forgotten. But should any of us attain to such prominence as to endure, and should that record cause future generations to actually recall what we have to hear today to say, I want them to understand without any question that I share no part in applauding Roe, nor any part in the efforts here today to praise it. Let me say it plainly, I do not stand with those that stand with Roe. This should be a day of mourning, not rejoicing. Finally, it should be crystal clear to all of us that life begins at conception. There is no excuse. And because of the loss of my daughter, Emerson Riley, in my womb, I will never stand by quietly while this is promoted. Politicians are shamefully good at remarking or remaking otherwise reprehensible things into okay-sounding initiatives. This should not be one. The larger debate is not about reproductive health. It is about abortion. It is about taking the life and health of a child, and it is wrong. Thank you.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Roe is the floor, not the ceiling. Roe was the floor, and the Supreme Court pulled the floor out from under us. In his opinion, even Justice Harry Blackmun acknowledged that the dividing lines in Roe were arbitrary. Arbitrary, not scientific. And now we live in an America where your rights to bodily autonomy are determined by your state's politicians. State legislatures and state legislatures. In Colorado, we know this, and we have demonstrated to the nation that with our focus on reproductive justice. It is not for me to determine medical necessity. It is not for us to ignore patient privacy and pontificate on anyone's pregnancy. It is certainly not for me to sit in moral judgment or to impose my religious beliefs. Are we to judge whether the means of conception is sufficiently violent for a pregnant person to access their fundamental rights to health care? Or are we to judge whether or not the violence is perpetrated by a family member and then you get to access fundamental health care? In Colorado, we do not draw arbitrary lines, a certain number of weeks or a certain required diagnosis. And with Rhea and our package of bills last year, we established that. Instead, we acknowledge every pregnancy is unique. Each medical circumstance, each family, each person's faith are their own. These decisions are never made better by legislators, instead of pregnant people working with their healthcare providers. I have 2 daughters. We had a joyous holiday with my son, my new son-in-law, friends, and family. But we also had a discussion about my daughter, as she plans to start a family, will enter a reality where the minute she becomes pregnant, she loses rights in 28 states. She will have less rights than her brother, her father, and less than her sister and her mother did at her age. My mother fought for this for me. I fight for my daughters. Roe was the floor. We continue to make sure to build a foundation in Colorado to preserve our fundamental rights.
Representative Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the only way that I felt that I could put words together today to share on the Roe v. Wade resolution was to write a letter to my daughter, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Dear my sweet Caroline, as I was getting ready for work this morning, you came into my room and told me that you wanted to go to work with me. This conversation happens most days, so I smiled and I asked you, where does mommy work? You giggled, and then you exclaimed, the zoo, and then you neighed like a little pony. I'll carry this moment with me throughout the day and hold it close like a shield when we hear the Roe v. Wade resolution. because even though it's 2024, not everyone I work with believes that you and I should be able to make decisions about our bodies. I'm proud to be raising you in Colorado because Colorado is and always will be a beacon of hope for pregnant people. My heart is filled with the deepest love for you and hope for your future, and it's because of your future that I'll never stop fighting to protect your rights and freedoms. Even though you don't understand yet, but baby, one day you'll understand. As women, there are so many things we carry with us throughout our lives. Societal expectations for how we should act, the jobs we hold, gender stereotypes about how much we should weigh, how we should dress, and how we should move through this world. We carry our lived experiences and our generational trauma of our ancestors with us every single day. And as your mom, I carry the joy you bring with me in my life right next to the weight of raising you in a world where you have fewer rights in this country than I did when I was your age. When you think about your future, know that places like Texas, Idaho, or any of the other states in this country that have banned abortion and seek to criminalize pregnant people are seriously off limits. Living in any of those states risks your rights, your liberty, your future. Caroline, your bodily autonomy is sacred, and no one, certainly not a politician or anyone seeking to force their religious views on you, should have the power to deny you control over your body or your life. It's not easy for me to tell you this, but when I was 17, I was sexually assaulted. I've never felt more relief than I did the day my period came because I knew I was free. You know that consent is a big deal in our house, and you know that your dad and I are raising you to feel empowered to confidently make decisions and to set and enforce your own boundaries. For a long time, I carried shame about what happened. Well, his words, "You're not going to get me for rape, right?" still ring in my ears 20 years later. I never consented to sex, and I definitely wasn't ready to become a parent. I was too young to buy Plan B, so I Googled clinics in Colorado and made a plan that I thankfully never had to put into action. While I would never wish this experience on anyone, I want you to know what happened to me because it fuels my commitment to fight to protect your right to abortion. I want you to have access to safe and legal health care if you ever find yourself faced with an unplanned pregnancy or in a situation where continuing a pregnancy would endanger your health or your well-being. I'm 37, and by the time you're my age, you too will have more friends than you can count on one hand that have had unplanned pregnancies, miscarriages, stillbirths, and abortions for a variety of reasons. I remember being 12 weeks along in my first pregnancy and going to the emergency room because I was bleeding. I was experiencing a threatened miscarriage, and when I got home, I got into bed and I didn't get out for days because I didn't know if the pregnancy that I so desperately wanted would progress or if it would result in a miscarriage. Thankfully, I carried that pregnancy to term, and I was lucky, but not everyone is. It's why I believe that everyone should have the right to make the best decisions for themselves without judgment, without fear, without stigma, and without worrying about being prosecuted or extradited or sent to jail. You and only you, Caroline, can decide if and when to have children, and I selfishly hope that you do, but I will respect whatever choice you make. As you grow, I want you to follow your passion and shape your own destiny. You come from a long line of strong-willed women who believed in the power of their dreams and were relentless in their pursuit to achieve them. Women like your great-grandmother Ruth, who made her way in a covered wagon to Homestead in Oregon. Your great-grandmother Virginia, who was one of few women to go to college in the 1940s and who, in spite of the rules, wore pants instead of a skirt to dinner. And your grandma Carla, who put herself through beauty school and opened her own salon. Caroline, every ounce of sass I put out into the universe multiplied and came back to me and you, and I am so proud to be your mama. My sweet, brave, independent, and strong-willed girl, you are capable of anything you set your mind to. May you break barriers, challenge injustice, and embrace your true self. And in the meantime, I'll be doing everything I can to create a world for you that respects your autonomy, values your voice, protects your rights, and ensures that the things your ancestors have carried are no longer yours to bear. With all my love, Mom. Thank you.
Speaker Pro Tem Degree Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning, members. I rise in support of this resolution and would like to share a story with all of you about why I'm so grateful to live in Colorado, a state that keeps critical healthcare decisions firmly in the hands of women and pregnant people. Most of you got to meet my daughter Lennon last session during one of our many Saturday sessions, and I very much appreciate the kindness all of you showed her, regardless of your feelings about me. Seriously. But what fewer of you know is that my wife Kira and I very much wanted to give Lennon a little brother or sister, and that in our attempts we lost 4 pregnancies over the course of 1 year. The first was a ruptured ectopic pregnancy in September of 2022, just 3 months after the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade. I very much appreciate the gesture, but it's okay. This is a long speech. There were 2 miscarriages last spring and summer, one of which required an overnight stay at the hospital to monitor Kira's vitals. And the last was a second ruptured ectopic pregnancy last September, almost exactly a year after the first. Had we been in a state that restricted abortion access, it is not an exaggeration to say that my wife might not have survived some of these moments. I told the story of the first ruptured ectopic pregnancy last session during a hearing in the Health Committee on a bill to restrict abortion access. Afterwards, members of the public came up to me and accused me of being a liar. I also received similar accusations via email. The basis of these accusations was that many of the proposed abortion restrictions did include an exception for the life of the mother. What I told them then, and what I will tell you now, is that these kinds of exceptions do nothing to protect the life of the mother. At best, they cause serious delays. Imagine a doctor waiting to send you to the OR while they consulted with a judge, a state board, or even their own legal counsel. Imagine doctors and lawyers discussing your medical condition and trying to determine whether they could safely operate on you without facing a lawsuit or criminal prosecution. Doctors should never be in this position. Delays cost lives. Last September, I was chairing an interim committee meeting when I got a text from Kira describing severe cramping. It was too similar to what had happened a year before. I immediately passed the gavel to my vice chair, sped home, and took her to the ER at Lutheran Hospital. They quickly got her checked in and on pain medication, but it wasn't long before her blood pressure started dropping dramatically. Doctors and nurses rushed in to pump blood into each arm, and Kira's awareness was fading. She started making me make promises about how I would care for our daughter after she was gone. To be clear, nothing was stopping them from providing that emergency care. But then came the next step, the step where they rushed her to the OR to extract the embryo that had embedded in the wall of her fallopian tube. This was the moment that would have been delayed if we were in a state that put in place restrictions on abortion access, even if there were so-called exceptions for the life of the mother. Any delay, even a small one, could very well have been the difference between life and death for my wife that day. After the surgery, we learned that Kira had 2 liters of blood in her abdominal cavity. 2 liters of blood. When women or pregnant people are in situations like these, we must not delay their care by putting government in between the patient and the doctor. These critical decisions must remain exclusively in the hands of the woman or pregnant person. Because we live in Colorado, Kira got the health care she needed without delay, and Lennon still gets to have her mama. And that is just one more reason why I support this resolution and will always stand up for abortion access. Thank you.
Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
Thank you, colleagues. It's important for me to note, while I am not a parent, I want to be able to share why this case was so important to women like me in my community when it comes to this notion of what is a choice. I had a privilege of living with a great-grandmother at a time to understand her stories, and when you're with your elders, they have the memories of their grandparents. And my great-grandmother's grandmother was a slave. And so when we talk about choices in this country and what Roe really meant, it really meant, particularly for Black women, that we could see ourselves as truly free. When your personhood is written into the Constitution as being shackled and that your bodies could be used to build others' political capital, but you could not be seen as either a citizen or able to vote with the 3/5 compromise, choice has been on the minds of Black women for centuries. Did not have the choice to determine if we would have babies that would earn other people money. They did not have the choice to keep their babies, babies often being separated from mothers to earn people money. And then later on, as the centuries passed, Black women also didn't have the choice to have biracial babies if they so chose. The Supreme Court had to determine the legality of biracial marriages as late as the late 60s. And because of the lack of choices, it has created a permanent weight, a permanent chip, if you will, on the devaluing of our lives and when our bodies are used. For centuries, the laws stating that Black women didn't have these choices, nor did Black women have the ability to complain or file complaints for crimes, led to a century-long stigma that to this day still rings. If you want to get away with assault, kidnapping, or even murder, do it to a Black woman. To this date, Black women are 3 times more likely to be sexually assaulted, not found when missing. Black girls are often seen to be anywhere from 3 to 5 years older than what they actually are. And we still have a fear of giving birth because we are not received well in healthcare with having a 20% mortality rate in 2024 when we give birth. And so to note that choices that should be innate to personhood were not only legislated for, but written into founding documents to note that this country made laws that here in 2024, even a woman like me worries if I will make as much as a man, worries if someone does hurt me, if I will be believed, worries if I do have a child, will I survive it in 2024? To be a part of a place that knew that laws created those conditions can be undone is fundamentally critical for anyone to believe if they truly have a choice, if we truly are who we say we are when it comes to the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of not even property, but happiness. And so there is a whole community that whether or not we choose to have our children, can we choose to have them in a space to which I can earn, to which I get health care, to which if something happens to me or my child, that people will believe me, or if I choose to not have the child that someone else put upon me. The freedom has been a centuries-long fight for this community, and to see it overturned, many of people I know feel the pain of that, but it is an old wound in our community. So I deeply respect the ability for people to make the choice. I deeply respect what it means for my community to think about how many children we do and do not bring into this world. But to have a government still say to your personhood that you cannot have that choice, well, I am glad that my great-grandmother had a great-grandmother who told the story so in 2024 I could be here to uphold those laws. Thank you.
Representative Garcia. Representative Herod.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the resolution sponsors for bringing this forward. I wasn't going to speak today, but as I think about my mom, and as you all know, I'm her primary caretaker, and so I believe it's important to share her stories now. So my mom was an officer within the military. Can you hear me? She became a OBGYN because, as Representative Bacon mentioned, Black women were not getting the care that we needed. Black women are overrepresented, Black people are overrepresented in the armed forces, and my mom knew that in order to get her education, but then also to provide care for the folks that needed it, she was going to become an OBGYN. So she served with honor in the U.S. Armed Forces, and I, as her military brat daughter, got to go along with her everywhere. And if you know what happens with a single mom when you have a sick daughter, especially one that's in the hospital, that works in a hospital, if you're sick, you better really be sick, because you're going to the hospital. And I would spend sick days with my mom in her waiting room at the clinic, the hospital. And I remember one day I was in the 4th grade and I was sick. And so I was sitting there waiting for my mom to do her examinations and to see her in between. I gotta tell you, there were many pamphlets that I shouldn't have been reading when I was in the 4th grade in the OBGYN's office. But I remember one day this woman came out of her exam room, and I know it's not fun in there, but one woman came out, she was a soldier, and she was crying. We were living in Seoul, Korea at the time. And I said, Mom, what happened? What did you do to her? And she said, I had to tell her that she will never be able to start her family when she's ready to. See, what happens in the military is you are not allowed to provide abortion care. So especially when women are overseas, especially those who do not have the money to go back home to the US, they get abortions at these clinics that are set up right outside of military bases. They prey on our soldiers, and they provide unsafe health care. And unfortunately, those with little decisions in front of them make the decision to get care that way. This woman was one of many who went off base to get an abortion and ended up almost dying, but also ensuring that she would never be able to start her family when she wanted to. I tell this story because it's important to note that just because you outlaw abortion does not mean that people will not have them. In fact, when abortion is illegal and when states that it is illegal, in times when it has been illegal, women have sought care, and it has been harmful and unsafe care. There is no reason why my mom could not have provided a safe abortion at that hospital, but for the laws that told her she could not. Fast forward, years later, I had just been elected to the State House. I thought I was pretty hot stuff. So I was taking my mom to the VA down in Colorado Springs, and I was dropping her off at the front of the building to walk in, and I was gonna meet with her after my very important phone call. As I was sitting in the car on a snowy day, right after Thanksgiving, I heard gunshots. Shots rang out throughout Colorado Springs, throughout the area that we were in, and we were told to seek shelter. I ran inside with my car still running to find my mom because I didn't know if the shooting was coming from inside of the VA. I found my mom. I started getting calls. One came from Congresswoman Diana DeGette, and it said, "Are you still in the area? It is unsafe. There is a shooter, and the situation has not been contained." The police on the ground didn't know what was going on either. I will tell you, they told us that we were on lockdown and we could not leave. For those of you who have served in the armed forces, you know that Army medics are told to get out when there is fire. My mom asked me where my car was. She grabbed my arm and we ran out of the VA. We later found out that someone was shooting then, at that time, through the parking lot and in the field. that person was shooting across the street at the Planned Parenthood. We found out there was a Planned Parenthood across the street, which we did not know. We knew we were safe there, leaving the VA, but we knew that so many people were not. And I hate to say that this was not the first time that I had encountered an incident where there was a shooter who was shooting at people simply because they were providing abortion care or getting an abortion themselves. In fact, in this very building, an armed man walked into the Capitol building, called himself the Emperor, and went to shoot Governor Ritter because he thought he supported abortions. I was also there and stood very close to the shooter when he was taken down by one of our troopers. This divisive language that we use around whether or not someone should have the choice to make decisions of their own bodies, the choice to be able to decide when to start a family, the rhetoric that we use is dangerous, and it's killing people. Our families should not have to make a decision about whether or not to be able to terminate a pregnancy safely, knowing that that mom, or that pregnant person cannot carry that child to term safely. We should not have to worry at our abortion clinics, at our reproductive health clinics, that someone may come in and shoot up the clinic simply because of the health care they are offering. And our soldiers, those who are there to protect us, should also be protected from harmful healthcare policies that lead them to make decisions to go off base and unfortunately destroy their bodies simply because they have no other options and don't know what to do. Colorado is leading the way in ensuring that every person, every family can make the decisions around reproductive health care that they need to make. But the work does not stop here. And again, I commend the sponsors, I commend the folks in this body who not only work to ensure that Coloradans have the reproductive health care that they need, but that every single person in this country has the reproductive health care that they need as well. So thank you to the bill sponsors, thank you to the body for listening. I will be in full support of this resolution and look forward to continuing the support of this body to ensure that everyone has access to reproductive health care. Thank you.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to my esteemed colleagues. The resolution today, I believe, has nothing to do with gun violence. So I'm going to speak specifically about the resolution. Roe versus Wade Anniversary Day. Because we want to stick to the bills and the resolutions. I know that better than anybody. Now, we talk about healthcare versus life. And everyone wants to gush and tell stories, so I'm going to tell one about life. You see, when my mother was pregnant with me, she had cervical cancer. And all the medical practitioners back in 1964 said, "Ma'am, you have to have an abortion. There is no way you can bring that child to term because of your cancer condition." These are American doctors, because at that time, my father, my Spanish father, naturalized as American, and my mother and my two brothers had left Spain and moved back to California, where most of my mother's family lived. So, a woman had to make a choice between life and health care. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I stand before you today, do you know what choice she made? Now, let me tell you the journey that had to be taken for me to be born. Because we had to go back to Spain. Because in this country, the medical practitioner said, we will not allow your baby, will not support this condition. You must abort your baby. And my mother made a choice, and she said no. She chose life for her child over an abortion. And yes, Representative Harrod is correct. Mothers give birth. Women have babies. They have that special gift, that beautiful biological gift that God has given them. Now, so we packed up and went back to my city of birth, where my Spanish family still lives today. And do you know what happened when we got there? The medical practitioner said we can absolutely support your baby being born and going full term. And after that, we'll perform the hysterectomy that American doctors have said is absolutely necessary, and we will begin cancer treatment. You have a statistical probability of life, but the cancer may take you. So every time we talk about this, I think about my mom's story, if we're going to tell stories about our mother. I am so thankful that my mother chose life over abortion. This is a very difficult conversation. But I am a pro-life legislator, and I believe in life. I also believe in women's rights. I have 5 daughters. So it's extremely complex. So let's talk about the next part of this little story. When I was in college, I had a girlfriend, and she was a beautiful young woman. And we had the unfortunate experience of her getting pregnant. Now, I'm Catholic, so you know my position on life. But I had to respect her rights because she said she didn't want to keep her baby. Now, that's hard. That's hard for a man who respects women. But I respected her rights and actually gave her money to help her through her important, critical time so she could live her best life, which she decided was not with me, in a future with me. But this story does have a happy ending because you see later in life, when I was a young Army officer and another beautiful woman who attended University of Kansas, high school friends, later became boyfriend and girlfriend, and started a very serious relationship because in your 20s, those things happen. We also had this misfortune because it was unplanned. But we made a choice. We chose life. You see, we were both Catholic, and we knew that we had made a mistake in the eyes of God. And we had to live up to it. So what did we do? And this is about choices and choice for life. She decided that she was not going to keep the baby for herself. She decided that we were not going to get married because I asked her, let's just get married. Let's just get married and make a family. But I had to respect her choice as a woman because she said no. Does anybody see the reoccurring theme here? So, we went to Wichita. We looked into Catholic charities and we arranged an open adoption. Adoption is a choice that oftentimes gets suppressed, and it's a way to give a family who can't have children a child. And it's a beautiful choice for life. I've lived it. We want to talk about lived experience. I have so much lived experience, you have no idea. But we won't talk about it all this morning, so you can thank me later. But let me tell you something. The Catholic charities were wonderful. My girlfriend and I took our beautiful daughter to term. One of the hardest things I ever did was give that girl away. But here's the beautiful thing. In that open adoption arrangement, my daughter Naomi, I got to see her every year. She got to know who her father was. She got to know me and know why she acts the way she does, because she's a lot like her daddy. Her hair color's the color it is, and where she comes from. And that she's a quarter Spanish, so she's Hispanic. And she needs to know that. And like her father now, she speaks Spanish because of me and teaches Spanish and embraces our Hispanic and our Latin culture 100%. Now, I have the privilege this next Monday of my daughter that I speak of and my grandson, Manny, coming to see me in Colorado. Think about that, what that means when you choose life. I'm here, she's here, and my grandson is here. Now, I will tell you, these are very difficult times.
Representative Holtorf, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I fully expected to get that 1 minute warning. I will tell you that in every case, we need to think about life. I cannot support this resolution because I am a product of that choice. So is my beautiful daughter, who's 31 years old now and teaches school, and my grandson, Manny, who would never be on this earth, who's a beautiful young 3-year-old boy that is my only biological grandson. Thank you for your time. I will not take the remaining 23 seconds.
And Representative, to be clear, the gun violence references earlier related to abortion care services, and I believe were within the context of the resolution. Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank all of our colleagues today on both sides of the aisle who bravely stood here to express their positions on such an important topic that affects more than 50% of us. 51 years ago, the United States Supreme Court issued a ruling embracing a person's decision to carry a pregnancy to term. In effect, declaring that it is a person's decision to terminate a pregnancy. According to the Cornell Law School, and I quote, "The constitutional basis for the decision rested upon the conclusion that the right of privacy embraces a woman's decision to carry a pregnancy to term. With regard to the scope of that privacy right, the court stated that it includes only personal rights that can be deemed fundamental or implicit in the concept of ordered liberty, and bears some extension to activities related to marriage, procreation, contraception, family relationships, child rearing, and education. Such a right, the court concluded, is broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether or not to terminate her pregnancy," end quote. So what did Roe v. Wade mean? It meant freedom. It meant privacy. It meant health care. It meant respect. It meant bodily autonomy. It meant a future. It meant a court-given right to choose. After 50 years of a right protected by the courts under the protections of the 14th Amendment of our nation's Constitution, a Constitution that has not changed 5 judges, 3 of which were appointed by a former President Donald Trump, instigator of an insurrection who has declared the intent to serve as a dictator on day 1, chose to ignore precedent, ignore their own words by perjuring themselves, declaring that Roe v. Wade was settled law, and then overturning a constitutional protection to the right of a person to choose to terminate a pregnancy. But we cannot settle in thinking that the Dobbs decision was the attack on our rights to choose. No. These attacks on our bodily autonomy began well before 1972 and the passage of Roe. However, since Roe was decided, over 13,000 state-based laws were passed to restrict access to abortion, and not because of a commitment to the healthy rearing of children, but because of our nation's long history in patriarchy and sexism. 13,000 laws were passed claiming that a woman should not have a right to make her own private healthcare decisions. Here in Colorado, the dangerous and harmful proponents finally realized that Colorado is a state that believes that abortion should remain a right. Coloradans believe that abortion is a personal, private decision upholding the 14th Amendment. Coloradans know that legal and safe access to abortion is life-saving. And yet, while Roe v. Wade protected the right to an abortion, it did not make abortion accessible. It did not mean that if you were living on a low income and raped, that you could afford an abortion. It did not mean that you were free from the lies and intimidation from those who do not trust your ability to make a decision. It did not mean that if you had a miscarriage, that you could continue unscathed by the scrutiny of investigations for causing a miscarriage. It did not mean that a clinic offering this healthcare service would be close enough for you to access, or that you could access the clinic without being harassed. And it certainly did not mean that your child would survive after birth, survive gun violence, even when your pregnancy was planned. The overturning of Roe v. Wade created a most unequal playing field for abortion access across our nation, and that was devastating. We have already seen the harmful impacts across the country who choose to outlaw one of the safest healthcare procedures. Brittany Watts, a woman, was accused of a crime in Ohio for having a miscarriage at home. Thankfully, the grand jury chose not to charge Ms. Watts. This is one story among many that illustrate the devastating impacts of abortion restrictions. So why are we bringing this resolution today? It is our duty as an elected body to respond to the fears and needs in our communities, and the fear in a post-Roe country is palpable. We are acknowledging that this fear exists, the fear for one's health, for one's life, for one's liberty, the liberty to choose. The bans on abortion are not just about people giving birth. It impacts those who choose to give birth by straining the perinatal health care system so that people who with intended pregnancies can't get the care they need. Bans on abortion exacerbate the already devastating maternal mortality rates for Indigenous and Black people. Think about what it means to be forced into pregnancy when your maternal mortality rates are so high that there is a strong chance you may not survive. We already know that states with restrictive abortion laws have greater mortality rates, and we are not in favor. Are we not all here in favor of protecting life? And if we are, then why are we not protecting the life of the pregnant person? I do agree with my colleague from Douglas County that today is a day of mourning. A day of mourning the loss of a constitutional right that gives everyone a choice to see a pregnancy through or a choice to not. But there is a silver lining in the post-Roe world. We have seen voters across the nation making their voices heard by enacting constitutional rights to abortion, even in conservative states. We are seeing the right here in the great state of Colorado to enact constitutional protections to abortion. We have the opportunity to support our congressional leaders in codifying this right so that we can all choose the health care we desire and need for ourselves. We have an obligation to reclaim our constitutional rights. We have an obligation to reclaim our freedom. Thank you. And I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 003. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Epps, how do you vote? I see a thumbs up. Representative Epps votes yes. Representative Velasco, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Velasco votes yes. Representative Judah, how do you vote? Representative Judah, if you can unmute yourself. Representative Judah. Representative Judah is excused. Please close the machine. With 41 aye, 14 no, 9 excused, and 1 vacant, Senate Joint Resolution 003 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Thank you, members. Announcements and introductions. Representative Wilford, I understand we have a special guest in the house.
Yes, indeed, Madam Speaker, we do. Members, I would like to introduce Julia Marvin. Julia, if you'll please stand. Julia is a former Thornton City Council member and was last night chosen to fill the vacancy for House District 31. Welcome, Julia.
Welcome, Representative-elect Marvin. We look forward to your swearing-in ceremony as quickly as we can get that paperwork from the Secretary of State. Excellent. Announcements. Representative Doherty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Joint Health Committee has Smart Act hearings upon adjournment in the Old State Library, so we'll see you there. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative McCormick and McLaughlin. The mix.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First announcement is those on the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee. We will be having our first committee meeting on Monday at 1:30, and we'll be hearing 2 bills, House Bill 1032 and 1024. So put that on your calendar. Second announcement is today and right now is your very last chance to make a contribution to the junior livestock sale, which basically are these kids' scholarship money for them to go further with their whatever it is they want to do in life. So we here in the House, I turned in some of the money that we had collected already, but I am able and willing to collect more. I know if Representative Catlin, thank you very much, were here, he'd be down here with me, but I decided to bring someone else on the Ag Committee to also encourage you to contribute. Thank you all for coming down and contributing. It's really, we're going to be there tonight. Anybody that wants to join us, please let me know, and we'll try to organize some kind of carpooling situation. We're going to be there and be bidding on these prize animals that these kids have worked so hard for so long to prepare for the sale tonight. This is amazing. You guys are amazing.
So excited.
It's nothing like the last minute to get this done. Woo! Yes. Thank you. This is great. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to say I taught a lot of these kids in high school, and the amount of work they put into this is just absolutely amazing. They fall in love with these animals, and then they have to see them go off for sale, and they're crying and joyful, and they have to keep immaculate records of everything it has to do. They are ready to take over the world, and I'm supporting them as the best thing we can do. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you both.
Just do it. Okay.
Representative Byrd.
Members, this isn't as fun, and I don't expect any money, but your joint budget committee, if you are on the House Health and Human Services Committee, we will be visiting you in your SMART Act committee hearing today, again, pursuant to House Rule 25D. So for members of the Health and Human Services Committee, please do not forget to bring your book, because again, we will walk you through what the governor has requested in terms of his November 1 budget for all of the departments for which your committee has oversight. So we will be there and look forward to a fun discussion.
Representative Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a reminder that Monday, 1:30 in the Old State Library, the Joint Finance Committee will be meeting for our SMART Act hearing. So get ready. All the materials are already loaded into the box. So if you don't have them, take a look. Thank you.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today, and then I'd like to give you a quick reminder to remove that food from on top of your desks, in your desks, anywhere in here. You know, we still haven't gotten mice, so we're ahead of the Senate. And also food in the refrigerator back there, if you could remove that too, if it's getting old. Thank you.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.